I want you to think about two things as you continue to move forward in your life. I want you to reorient your thinking to progress, not perfection. You're never going to be perfect. It's okay to strive for it, but you have to understand that progress is really what this is about. It's a journey, not a destination. And as you're on that journey, you're going to have to you're going to have to constantly be making trade-off decisions. And remember this, you can have almost anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. So everything you're deciding in your life, it's a matter of trade-offs.
Hey, what's up, loyal listeners? Welcome back to another awesome episode of the Life Inner Show podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and live better lives. Polish Peter, my co-host, is here with me. What's up, dude?
Hey, somebody needs to be looking good on this episode, on this podcast. And
Is
it's
it you?
not me. No, I just said it's not me. So, I mean,
Well, yeah, well, let's be honest, man. This is kind of like the peanut show here. Like we got some commentary, some jokes, hopefully some content, a little bit of
so
entertainment.
who's the peanut? You're the peanut, I'm the monkey, or you're the monkey, I'm the peanut? Where is it?
I'm not sure that analogy is like one we really want to explore, but like it's
We just lost
there
everybody.
nonetheless. Well, dude, we got an awesome episode coming up. We are going to be talking with Mark Jordan, who really cool story with him, man. He has a huge background in investment banking, real estate, financial services. We don't really get into that though. We get into his passion, and that is something that I think is really relevant for our listeners. And this is, by the way, I want to just say right now, we're going to talk about like how Mark really steps into and challenges men to become better, to grow, to make sure that they're living and experiencing and being all they can. Now, if you're a woman right now, I still want you to listen to this because you're going to learn some lessons about some of the challenges that men think through. You're going to learn how perhaps your spouse thinks and views things. And it's going to be valuable for you to even see some things that you can apply to your own life. Because quite frankly, although he is talking about men specifically with what he does, the exact same lessons apply to females. Like it's universal. Like, so what we talk about is equally valuable regardless of who you are.
Yeah, so I mean, I would encourage you to listen to this episode because, if you're a man, it's a great conversation to have because we talk about some crucial conversations. How you have crucial conversations in life, right? That's one thing. And how you be more authentic in your life and to be able to connect with people, the community. We talk about community, how to surround yourself with the right people in your life that will help you grow as opposed to, kind of tear you down and things like that. So these are the kinds of things that whether you are 20, 30, 40, or 60 years old, I think are important for you to start to look and considering to build that tribe, build that way of looking at life, thinking about it from someone who's been there, done that. And I'm excited to share this episode with you guys.
Let's do it right now, man. Let's go into our interview with Mark Jordan. Mark, what's up, man? Great seeing you again. Welcome to the show.
Great seeing you too, Jason and Peter. I'm really excited to be with you guys today.
So, Mark, you have I think of you as almost like a combination of like a business guy with a combination of being on a mission as well, which, by the way, like is totally in alignment with what we teach, and especially like you're kind of. And correct me if I'm misspeaking, but your kind of initiative, your focus, you're drawn towards men specifically and helping them kind of level up. What is it about this, that is so passionate for you? And like, why do you find this so important?
Yeah, oftentimes when people ask, why just for men? And the easy answer for me is I am a man. I know my life struggles, right? I've got plenty of friends. I know their life struggles. So, what a better, there's nothing better to talk about than these struggles that we go through and that we share in life together. And I've always been really passionate. I say always, probably since maybe my early 30s. Because when I was growing up, I didn't really have like a good mentor figure in my life. And I didn't even know that existed. And then after I got out of graduate school, I had some great mentors in my life. And it really opened my eyes to the importance of that. And then once I experienced that, I became passionate about investing in younger men. So really just that component of knowing how good that feels, and it cut 20 years off my learning curve and still does. I still have mentors in my life. And so that's really driven me to a passion to really invest in men, to help them move the ball down the field in whatever area of their life they're stuck, and we're all stuck in some area.
Right, right. So who do you feel like resonates the most with what you share, and what are some of the challenges they are experiencing?
Yeah, well, broadly speaking, we always say just what if you're stuck in some area of your life, what we do at Unravel is going to be meaningful for you. If we look more specifically at, say, demographics or personas, or who really tends to gravitate to Unravel, it tends to be a guy in their mid-20s to mid-40s. Now, we have guys in their 60s and 70s that participate in Unravel for sure, but the vast majority tend to be in that demographic. And they're really all types. We've tried to find, is there a common theme? Are they stuck in one particular area? And Jason, you and I have talked in the past about this idea of faith, family, friends, fitness, finances, these sort of 5 F's that we think about in everything that we deliver,
Yep.
in our content. But they're in one area. Men it just varies. They're all stuck in some area of their life, sometimes more than one. And it's like which area they feel the most pain is generally the one they're gonna focus on first to get unstuck. But the reality is we can grow in all those areas.
What is it? So when let's kind of like define this word stuck, and like what is it about? Is it a perceived stuck? Is it a real being stuck? Is it a sense of not kind of living up to what you think you're capable of, or that you see others doing? Like, how does somebody really identify as being in this position? And also, how do you get somebody? This is especially, man, with men. All right. Now, yes, I'm stereotyping,
Yeah, we
but
can do
men in
that since we're
particular,
men.
yeah, right. Well, sometimes like we don't, we're tough. We're gonna do this on our own. We're gonna,
Right.
right. So how do you open somebody up to that possibility and help them recognize they have the challenge?
Yeah, man, I wish there was a secret sauce to, like, here's the secret phrase or whatever to do that. What we've landed on and discovered over time is that you cannot want it more than the other person.
Mm,
So the first ingredient is, do you as a man want this more than I do if I'm here to help you in some way? Help meaning through Unravel or just individually in a relationship. But if I want it more than you, we're not going to get anywhere. So that's one. They have to want it more. And I have never discovered a way to foster that in someone if they don't discover it themselves, except to ask them questions and to note how they're not showing up well. And I've found that with men, that once they feel that, which I like sports metaphors. So to me, the way I like to talk about it is they're not moving the ball down the field. And it comes out in their dialogue, right? When they're talking, they're, well, man, at work, I'm not making the progress, or my marriage isn't really what I hoped it would be, or man, I'm out of shape. I'm just not working out the way I should or eating the way I should. And then really trying to ask good questions that lead men to realize, yeah, what would you call that? If you're not moving the ball down the field, stuck. I'm stuck. And usually some derivation of that word is where men land. And then it's just a question of, do you want to become unstuck? Do you want to start moving the ball down the field? And unfortunately, and I know I've been this at times in my life where I'm stuck and I readily admit it, but I'm not really ready to do anything about it. That's the
right.
piece. And we're trying to meet men whenever they're ready to do something about it, we want them to know they've got a pathway to accomplish that with.
Well, I think you got guys that aren't ready to admit that they're stuck. You have, and maybe listen, maybe it's denial, maybe it is avoidance, maybe it's like, you know, they're taught like I'm gonna make this, it's pride, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, so you're dealing with all these emotions, like all of these perspectives, but yet how do you determine whether or not somebody, like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, sometimes, and I'll give you an example. Sometimes within Life and Air, we know somebody needs help,
Yes.
and we see it, and we see the consequences if they continue on that road. And for whatever reason, they just are reluctant to step forward, man. And it breaks my heart. And then often I'm not a genie, but like, you know,
Yeah.
I can predict pretty well of who's going to struggle, and you want it so bad
Yeah.
for them. But like you said, if they don't want it, or that not willing to take that step, like what do you do? Like, do you just kind of say like, "Hey, I'm here when you need me," or like, how do you leave it?
Yeah. That's a great thought because It is hard. In fact, one of the things I've always struggled with personally is just carrying like emotional pain of what people are going through, and being
Right.
hard for me to just let it go and realize, I can't do that. They have to do it. They have to want it more than me. And I've just always have been a big believer in having, good conversations with people and tell them, hey, this really isn't a productive time that we're spending together. If this is more of a one-on-one conversation, not an unravel, because once you're on unravel, it's different. But if I'm having a one-on-one conversation, hey, this really isn't productive time, and let me share with you why. We've been talking, we've been connecting, we've been talking about these things that you can make progress in, and I don't know if you've noticed, but they're not really happening. So we're not really, this isn't productive time. So whenever you get to a point where you want it more than I do, then let's reconnect. And then what I find solace in personally is that, and it doesn't work all the time, but it's what I try to lean into, is that we all know there are multiple points of contact a person who is stuck probably needs to have to begin to make that first step. And so maybe I'm point of contact number two, and maybe it's 2 points later, then they're really going to make that step to get unstuck and get involved in something. So maybe I don't get to see that, but at least I know that I had an encounter with a person. I planted some sort of a seed. I at least made some contribution to whatever point of contact, whatever number of point of contacts they need before they become unstuck. And it's hard. At the end of the day, it's just accepting the fact that this person just doesn't want it more than me. Therefore, my time is more valuable. It's spent in a more productive way with someone else who isn't in that space.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that, because like I struggle with this a lot, like where I also feel the pain of people. Like I hurt for people when I see them
Yeah.
suffering, and I want, but it's the end of the day, it's like the whole like you can lead a horse to water kind of thing. Like, and I just don't know how to like really like, without being pushy and being like, no, you listen, you're like
Yeah.
on the edge of the cliff right now. And I've heard people describe it differently. And so I was curious where you fell on that. Um, and so talk to me about like when you're getting unstuck, and you've mentioned several different areas, right?
Mhm.
They all require a level of growth, of development, of maybe doing things differently, thinking differently. Are there any similarities that you've seen across patterns of this plateau where like it's usually like, is it the same culprits just showing up in different places, like a relationship or in your health or in your business? Or is it truly like different, different, the symptoms maybe are showing up differently, but there's one underlying cause, or are there more than one cause that you see frequently? The reason I'm asking is because I want to help people start to diagnose a little bit themselves to see if there's some things they can look out for.
Yeah. There's so many things that I think we could, put into this pool of conversation here that would be meaningful in that regard. But here's a couple that I found to be helpful. One is, I think people, and I know for myself, for many, many years, that this was something that was hard for me. First, how do you put words around what you're really struggling with at this particular point in time? Usually people have throwaway phrases. They're saying, I'm stuck, I'm not doing good at work. What does that really mean? Like, in really learning to put words around, to frame
Mhm.
what the real core issue is that that's causing you to feel stuck. I love Henry Cloud's an author that I love a lot, and he wrote a book called Integrity, and he has this great definition for integrity: the courage to meet the demands of reality. And I love that because more times than not, I have found that it's the reality piece that men struggle with. It's really not the courage part. It's reality. So this is my comment about putting words around it. Until you can put words around what your reality is, okay, you have been doing this same thing for 9 years and you've made no progress. That's your reality. Have you really put words around it that way before? So that's that. I think that's a number one piece, is that discovering, articulating what your reality is. The second piece, then, I feel like people are missing at practical level just tools. They're not equipped. So maybe they're stuck, let's say, for example, in their marriage. Okay, they discover this reality, they accept it, they put words around it. Then what tools do they have? They just keep doing the same thing. And so without proper tools, people continue to remain in that stuck position. That's part of what we do at Unravel is give them tools in these 5 F's, if you will, faith, family, friends, fitness, finances. We give them tools to become unstuck and then to make real progress in those aspects of that. So those are two big things I would highlight that I think help men move when they're ready.
I love that.
Yeah, man, I think it's a really good conversation to have because I think a lot of people are struggling, especially men, because a lot of it has to do with the fact, like, pride and I'm a man, you know what I mean? I don't talk
Exactly.
My
about my
chest, yeah.
feelings, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
those kinds of
Yeah.
things, right? Um,
Insecurity.
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting you brought up insecurity, right? Because they feel like I'm secure, but deep down inside, there was some insecurity about that and how I talked about it and who do I talk to and all those kinds of things. And you mentioned also the tools. For a man, I think that sounds really good because, okay, tool, I got a tool. All right, let's use it. What's the tool?
Yeah, that's the
Right?
right word.
Right, right,
Right.
right, right. That's right. Another thing is what we found that or believe that scalable, sustained growth best occurs in a group setting. So I don't remember the stat. I don't know what the stats are today, but I remember years ago when I wrote some books, the average person reads 1.5 books a year. All right, but even if you read one book in a year and it's a very meaningful book for your life, it's very hard to then take that information and apply it consistently in your life. But if you're in a group setting where people are working on that together, then it becomes something that becomes scalable and sustainable. And I think to your point, Peter, it's we feel like we got it. It's pride, and frankly, it's I don't know that we're given enough. I don't know if the word permission, if that's the right word, to express insecurity. I mean, that's not something I could do until, recent years to say, yeah, I'm just insecure about that. I have anxiety about that. And that's actually an intimacy builder at the end of the day when we can have those
Mm.
conversations because they're feeling the same way. All three of us feel the same way. And when we share that with each other, we feel closer.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the reasons I think is because if we were to go and share and be quote unquote, like you said, intimate, that looks like weakness. You know what I mean? And I
Right.
think that's why a man don't step out of it. I mean, I have students who are men in my own masterminds that, I don't talk about my feelings. I don't cry. I've met like I've never cried in my entire life, you
Yeah.
know? Well, unless I hit my thumb with a nail, I mean, with a hammer, then yes, okay, I'll cry. So listen, so let me ask you this because sounds to me like you have a lot of experience in that area to helping people, man specifically in there. So can you share with us maybe a couple of tools that have helped you to help others, whether it's one of those areas like finances or family or anything like that? A couple of tools that you can show.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. If I could pick, well, I'll just highlight one right now that I think
Mhm.
transcends all aspects of our lives, and that's how to have crucial conversations. Kerry Patterson wrote a great book called How to Have, actually, I think the title is How to Have Crucial Conversations, but I think maybe it's just Crucial Conversations. Um, and when you really stop and think, it's interesting as we go about our daily lives and have interactions with people in all aspects of our lives, really, most people don't have a grid, a system, a process, a method to have important, difficult conversations with people in their life. They don't. So imagine if just that one area of your life you could grow in and just make 20% progress. You've got your personal relationships are going to improve. Even if the other person, in the relationship isn't doing the same thing, you're going to make progress. You're going to have more understanding. Business, same thing. So I think that's huge. And if that one book alone, I think can
Mm.
change someone's life in that regard. The other part that this is more of a mindset, and this is something that became really, I think, front and center in my life, certainly in the last 10 years, that if I could go back, I wish I would have been more intentional about one word, and that's curiosity. I wish that all my relationships and all my important encounters in my life, I entered them with a sincere, you can weaponize curiosity as well, right? But a sincere curiosity to go, Jason, man, I'm really curious. So how are you feeling? Or what's behind this? Or you reacted this way? Or Peter, you said this thing, I'm really curious, like what led you to that? Or You thought this about me. Why? In that sincere curiosity, it's amazing. There's a great book called Leadership and the Art of, I'm drawing a blank on it too. Leadership and the Art. It's written by the Arbinger Group. Leadership and the Art of Self-Deception, or I can't remember, but Google that and you'll see a wonderful book. And it really does help you focus on what's going on in that other person's life first. And it's Covey, seek first to understand, right? Of course, it's all some repackaging of that. But I think that's the other piece for me, two practical things that can make a difference. Being curious doesn't even require a skill. That's just a mindset and intentionality. Say, okay, I'm going to be curious one time today, right? Tomorrow I'm going to be curious two times, and let's see where that leads.
And call me crazy, but based on what you're saying, that having crucial conversations and being curious, you can integrate those two, huh?
Exactly. Wow. And next thing you know, you're having a life-giving conversation with someone that was previously, did make a lot of progress on.
Is this the book, Mark?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Leadership and
getting out of the box.
Getting out of the box. All right. But yeah, I'll check that out.
Look at you, Vojo, being all
Bro,
like,
I'm like on this
Mr.
today.
Tech.
I'm like boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
You're Mr. Tech guru over there, man.
What is happening over here? Because usually we don't do that on the podcast.
You guys,
I'm like,
see that 1 minute late to the podcast was producing fruit.
In fact, if you Googled, I bet like top 100 leadership books or something, that book would, I bet, be on 8 out of 10 lists. It's that good and important of a leadership book. Yeah.
Love it, man.
Well,
So, go ahead,
Vojo.
I would say, so I want to get back for a second, something you said though, about community. And this is a huge part of life in air, but from your perspective, you said something about change really being incredibly empowered by community. What kind of community? What kind of people? What does that look like? Because the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the community is like iron sharpens iron, right? All the proverbs that are referring to the value of having wise counsel, of peers, the companion of fools suffers harm kind of thing, right? Like Bible talk kind of stuff. Talk to me a little bit about community.
So, and this is a great, sort of commercial for Unravel Groups and what we're doing, because I'm 61 and feel like I've been in every group that you could possibly be in, of all different flavors. And the vast majority have had values for sure. But just to frame this, let's say you have one group that on one end of the spectrum would be more socially shared experience oriented. It's more hang time. We're going to get together. Sometimes people call it an accountability group or whatever, but it's really just hang time. How you doing, bro? What's up? What's going on in your life? And it's really just sharing information, sharing experience together. Then you have the other end of the spectrum, which I would call, let's say, the highly intellectual. Like I used to do BSF. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but wonderful. It's like 7 years through the Bible. It's intense. It's intellectual. It's great. It's wonderful. It's not for everyone though. They're all over the world, but it's still not something that appeals to the vast majority of the people. And I realized that the men that I knew, what they wanted is they wanted to be in a group where they could accomplish something together. This is a big ingredient. It kind of like run a marathon together instead of, because hang time, at some point you go, man, I like you, but I'm not really growing any. I'm in the same place I was, 5 years ago. So Unravel Groups was really meant to meet that spot. So it's kind of in between. There's definitely the intellectual component. There's definitely the community component. But the real thing is we are on a journey together. So let's say we're reading a book. Let's say we're reading Crucial Conversations together in Unravel Groups. That is one of the books that we do. We spend a month on that. And then we meet once a month, 3 hours long. And so outside of that, you're reading the book and a few other things. You get together. Here's the big part. Here's where the growth occurs. Most group environments, when you show up, let's say you're reading a book, Peter, you say, to someone in the group, hey, what'd you think about the book? And the answer sounds something like this. Oh man, it was great. I really got a lot out of it. Really loved it. And, I really see some ways in there that I can grow. In Unravel, that's not acceptable. In Unravel, you show up, you have to have prepared comments. You have to have discussion around how you are going to apply it and how you have applied it in your life. And so we teach men to show up well, because we really believe, and my experience has been that on the whole, particularly faith-based men do not have the best reputation in the marketplace. I mean, men of faith they should have such a great reputation of excellence that everyone's drawn to that. But generally speaking, that's really not what you see. So we want men to learn to show up excellently. It's like you show up, you're going to talk about this in a professional way, talk about application. Well, guess what? When you're talking about that, now you're learning really, it's becoming more ingrained because you're actually studying it as opposed to just reading it for reading's sake. So that I think is the kind of secret sauce, the DNA, at least in Unravel groups. Obviously, anyone can do it, but that creates this scalable, sustained growth. And then you start stacking on top of that other things throughout the year-long experience. And you wake up and you go, wow, I've really accomplished a lot. And one of our mantras is progress, not perfection. Like I'm the worst at feeling like I could be perfect and then feeling shame when I'm not. And we know intellectually that's not a way to be, but it's hard not to be, particularly when you see the gap between where you could be and where you are. So we want men to celebrate progress as they do this, run this journey together.
Man, I love that. And so using the book, so as you're talking, man, something hit me, which is like so many relationships out there in the real world are, I don't want to say superficial, but you're not talking about the real stuff. You're not diving in deep. You're not experiencing that real kind of like, I don't know, like, kind of like a connection on a deep
Yeah.
level. And when you talked about the book example, I love that you said, oh yeah, like, because listen, when you were talking, I'm like, that's exactly like what most people say, right? Like, oh, it was good. I saw a couple, but you kind of like gave it a whole new dimension. Um, how does somebody now, and by the way, is that I'm assuming like, and maybe I shouldn't assume, but like, that's probably a general principle about a lot of things in life, right? Like,
Of course.
how do we apply? How do we, really, really dig in on this? Do you have any, and I know that, and this is a difficult question, and I'm not even sure I'm phrasing it correctly. Are there any other illustrations you can think of like that whether it's with, your groups or that you've seen? Like, I just love this little micro example you gave about books. Where else can people look to see like other areas that they've kind of been playing it like just like superficially or like surface level? Do you have any examples like of other things maybe you guys do that is deeper than what most people would expect?
Yeah. And I think first, just to highlight or amplify that point is these things take practice,
Mm,
right? And that's the piece that's hard to do by yourself is to practice these things, these communication skills, these other skills that we're talking about here. The thing that I really encourage people to do, and it can be very eye-opening, is you need to go to people, at least 5 people, but they can't be people that aren't going to give you honest feedback. And you need to ask them, hey, what are areas, what are you seeing in me right now that are blind spots? What are areas you feel like I can improve on? Where are areas that you look like I'm stuck? In fact, every year I send to my closer, more intimate relationships and friends. I send to them. I don't do it face to face because I want people to have time to think about it. I send them an email every year and say, hey, what, if anything, have I done in the last year, that has offended you or created some fracture in our relationship that you want to share with me? This is a great time to do it. And it's an extension really of that question that I ask people. I encourage people to ask people and then if you talk to 5 people and they say, oh, nothing, man, it's all good. You're not talking to the right 5 people. Because if you talk, you have to, because we're not perfect. If you're talking to the right people, they will give you things that then can become a really wake up call to go, wow, I had no idea, and I think that's a simple way for people to expose the blind spots that they have.
dude, so,
Would you
now
say
that
your
you're
wife and
asking,
your kid? What's that?
now that you ask, you pull out the list like Santa's looking like.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say your wife and your kids will be the best people to go to?
Well, you know what? I do send that to my wife and kids every year, but I think, it's harder oftentimes for family because there's history there that
Yeah, I get it.
sometimes make you go, wait, you said that about me. Well, what about this thing that you did? So, but
Right.
I would include my wife and kids for sure. I, but they certainly can't be the only group. It's got to be people outside of that group that are friends, people that you have interaction with professionally as well, that you feel will give you good feedback.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's one of the problems with this, Mark, is because like if people are playing small, they're being superficial with people, those other people may not know the true you, and they may not have a complete picture of your life such that they can give you qualified feedback, right? So it's kind of like a little bit of a cycle you could create for yourself if you don't dive a little bit deeper and find those people.
That's right. And here's the good news. That will become evident if you don't have good, constructive feedback from people, because that means, well, you must not be being authentic with people, or you're talking to the wrong people. Because the answer
Yeah.
cannot be, it's all good, man.
Yeah.
Or you
Yep.
don't provide them with a space to be able to give you that feedback because you might
Yes,
be like this kind of a person,
Get
like,
defensive.
nobody's going to tell me what to do, kind of a thing.
right.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So, so listen, I love what you're sharing on this podcast. I want to make sure that we respect your time. I'm just curious from my own perspective. If I gave you a megaphone to
Hmm.
talk to the entire humanity, me talking about all the men in the
Mm.
world for 5 minutes, what would you say to them?
If I had a megaphone to talk to all of humanity
All the
for
men in the world.
all the men in the world, so my first thing would be faith oriented. It'd be okay, I would want them to understand that the truth, wisdom is available to them, and it's accessible to them in ways that they could never imagine. So that's the high level. If it's kind of a level below that within the context of that, I would want men to understand that I would want men to reorient their life. I would say, men, I want you to think about two things as you continue to move forward in your life. I want you to reorient your thinking to progress, not perfection. You're never going to be perfect. It's okay to strive for it, but you have to understand that progress is really what this is about. It's a journey, not a destination. And as you're on that journey, you're going to have to constantly be making trade-off decisions. And remember this, you can have almost anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. So everything you're deciding in your life, it's a matter of trade-offs. You have to decide, oh, you want to take a great trip. Maybe you're not buying the same car you're going to go. Or, oh, you want to spend more time with your family. Okay, maybe you're making a different choice at work, or you're in a season where you need to make an advancement vocationally. Well, you're going to have a talk with your family and go, hey, this is going to be a season where I'm not going to be around as much, or the list is endless. But I really believe all these decisions we're making are a series of trade-offs, choices that we're making. And if men, I feel like could those two things, I think, could make a difference in the trajectory of their life and the way they orient toward the journey. Because and the last thing I would say to them, I go, hey, for me, it was a long time before I realized that the journey was more important than just the destination. Because I was always like, man, I got to get to this destination as quickly as I can, realizing once you get there, there's another destination in the distance that you're trying to get to after that. And then you kind of miss all the important lessons along the way.
I love it, man. That's a great stuff, man. Because, yeah, I mean, think about it this way, because we're so, especially entrepreneurs, business owners, right? We are so like trained into the goals and destinations and markers and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. And most of the time, that drive actually allows us to completely miss the present moment, just being present on the daily life with people around us and family and things like that. So I love that you brought that up. So,
Yeah, and it's too. I guess the last piece I would say is that you can pursue all those things outside of faith, right? And that's going to leave you with an empty feeling. If
mhm.
you pursue those things within the context of faith, then you're going to have a feeling of contentment, a feeling of peace, a feeling of purpose in your life that you can't get outside of that context within the whole faith piece. Because we think that's the DNA that wraps around everything. It's not just a segment, it's the DNA that wraps around everything.
Love it, man. Mark, I love what you're doing. You're a blessing. And where do people find out more about Unravel and about what you're doing?
Well, we actually have a page for your listeners. So if they go to unravelgroups.com/TLS, obviously the Life and Air show, but if they go to unravelgroups.com/TLS, they can learn more about our offerings and, everything that we're up to.
Love it, man. Keep fighting the good fight, my friend. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, guys. It was great. Great spending time with you.
Man, I really enjoyed talking with him. He has a lot of, I think, and this is what's cool, man. We have these guests on the podcast, and I just, first of all, I learn every single time. So when he was talking about the book of and he's giving the feedback of what it would be a typical response, in my head, I'm like, that's kind of what I would say until he challenged it. And so I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. Right. Really? So I'm seeing areas in myself that I can play bigger on or dig deeper in,
Yeah, and I mean that book example was a great example of how we actually do that. But think about it this way: that book example. Let's consider for a minute it's a metaphor.
Right.
That could be a metaphor for so many different things in life. Think about it this way: if somebody comes up to you, the listener, right now, and you're struggling something with life, and somebody says, "Hey, man, hey, woman, or whatever, how you doing?" What's the typical answer? Good. I'm all right. Great. But we don't dive deeper into this, right? And sometimes maybe it's not the time to do it, but we don't literally tell someone to be able to go and step outside of the normal conversation that we have, right? I'm good,
right,
and things like that. Think about it this way. I used to, back in the day, before I started this whole journey, whenever somebody would come to me, I would they would say, how you doing? I would say, same, different day.
Right.
So, but that was the typical response. And if there was something going on in my life, like something bad, even during my divorce, I would say, I'm good. But we don't typically open up and actually share this. So you can apply this to so many different areas of your life, whether it's your mental health, whether it's business, whether it's personal relationship, whether it's kids. We have people coming to students in my life that say my kids don't want to share anything with me. One of the first thing I ask them, well, do you share yourself with them? You're expecting them to share with you, but are you sharing yourself with them? Are you being vulnerable? Are you being authentic with them? Because if that's not the case, how do you expect them to be? So that could be used as a metaphor for so many different things in life.
Well, it totally is, man. And that's why I asked him about that, because it's just such a great example. And, so this theme of going deeper, right? I think being curious, is such an interesting concept to really explore and apply. And
one of the things idea too, right?
Yeah.
Be curious in life. What?
Yeah. So I found real value there. The other place that I love that he talked about too is how he emails, 5-ish people every year to ask them for feedback, for insights, what are my limiting beliefs? What are my blind spots? How have I been as a friend or as a spouse? Or getting that feedback is so crucial, because and I know you were joking about maybe, hey, is your spouse or your kids the best people to ask? But maybe someone important to you who really knows you is the best person to ask, assuming, like you said, they can be honest with you, right? And you're not going to bite their head off. You're not going to hold it against them. You're open to feedback. They know who you are. They see the real you behind closed doors. Those are all important qualifications for this. And by the way, dude, this whole idea of community, this is the thing. And now, no offense, Peter. I know what you're about to I'm going to say this right now. Our life and air coaches are amazing, but I believe it's the community that puts us above anybody else. We've been super blessed to have an incredible, and I'm giving the glory to God in this, for sure, the credit to God. We've just attracted people who genuinely want to see people succeed, who are there to pick you up when you're down, who are there to celebrate when you have a win. And that is rare. And so what he's talking about in this episode, I've personally witnessed how important, how critical this can be for someone's growth.
Oh, yeah, I totally believe it. I'm not taking any offense to that, because without that community, without that mastermind model that we have, I don't think people will have the breakthroughs that they are doing. Because it's one thing to having conversation one-on-one with someone like a coach, but it's a whole different area when you're sitting there in the room with a whole bunch of people that love, appreciate you, and being real, authentic with you, and they're not judging you. And then you can get to share about what's going on, what's happening. And then the whole room comes around you to help you, get through it or get to the, goal, whatever that you're trying to do that, right? So I think that is such a huge community. It's so powerful, especially right now, because think about it this way. For the majority of the part, we're kind of separated right now in life. The technology has kind of put us into this little, like this, I'm in front of my phone like this. I mean, I will tell you this. So me and my wife just went for a walk. We do these walks all over the place here in the area. And there's a park that we go to. This past Sunday, we went to this park and the parking lot was packed. It was full. And I was like, what is going on over here? Maybe there was some kind of a, thing going on in the park. So we go over there and there was this group of people, and you were from there maybe 20s to maybe 40s, just in one area. And guess what? There's probably 30 of them in there. Every single person is like this on a phone. And I think the reason for that is because there's some kind of a game where they have to be in this, geographical area. But think about it. They're all in there together and nobody's talking to each other. Everybody's just on their own phone. So that community, right. I think it's so much more important in today's world that you can only imagine. And when you step and create a community for yourself or just, come alongside someone to be in that kind of community, it will transform how you live life. I know it did for me, and I know it's doing for a lot of my students. So, I think that's a huge important piece for you to be able to create that.
Yeah, totally, man. And listen, and I know that not everybody's, going to be a life in remember, but regardless of where you are, you got to create that community. You got to find those people. And I know it's not easy, but you just got to put some real effort in. You're going to be disappointed on occasion. You're not going to find the right person, but you just got to keep going. Because the alternative is you just live a superficial version of what connections should be like. And you're not going to experience kind of that sense of, bonding, of camaraderie, of, true, authentic growth that you could otherwise.
Yeah. One last thing that just before we jump off this particular episode, because you mentioned about that emailing those 5 people. I think there needs to be this from your perspective. If you are emailing the listener, if you're emailing somebody else, you need to have, let go of that pride, ego, whatever, because you might not want to hear what you're going to hear. And actually be able to take that as a constructive criticism and not be offended by it, whatever the case may be. I think that's an important aspect of it. The other aspect that I want you to consider is this. As you're listening to this particular episode, you're listening to us talk and those emailing those 5 people. And if you have people in your life, let's say you're married, or you have kids or whatever, or you are in a community, ask yourself this question. Am I listening? Are you listening? Because I would imagine that people are telling you that what you got going on, those questions that you want to ask during those 5 things, people have been telling you this for a little while. So the question is, am I listening? Am I really, truly listening? And I know this from my own experience because, we can go back to it, but I wasn't listening for a very long time. And that cost me. So I'm just asking you, the listener right now, to ask yourself, am I really listening to what people are saying?
Love it, man. And I'm going to ask one more thing right now, which is if you liked this episode, if you loved it, do one of 3 things. Give us a review, leave a comment on the podcast. Number 2, just give us a star review, up to 5 stars on that. Or 3, share it with somebody. Now, you don't have to do one of 3. You could do all 3. But just as a starting point, we would really greatly appreciate it. Because this is how we reach other people. This is how the world of algorithms help other people find the Life Inner Show, and how we can to collectively help people level up through our own version of community. We'll see you next week, everyone. Take care. Have a great one.